Today's topic is application filtering. So we'll see how to filter an application on the FortiGate firewall. But before that, we need to understand what's the importance of the application filtering on your FortiGate firewall. See, when I talk about any next generation firewalls, all the next generation firewalls should have an application filtering. If any firewall does not have an application filtering feature, that firewall is not basically called as an application filtering, I mean like next generation firewall. Okay, for an example, when you create a router to work like a firewall, let's say we have Cisco iOS firewall, or you can say zone based firewall. This is not a next generation firewall. Not a it's not a next generation firewall. When I talk about Cisco ASA firewall, ASA firewall does not have the application filtering feature. It's not a next generation firewall. Okay. In terms of features, if we are comparing with the other firewalls, we understand those are not the next generation firewalls. But when I talk about FortiGate, right, Palo Alto, Checkpoint, right, FTD, Cisco's FTD, these all are the best firewalls in the world, and these all firewalls has the application filtering. So what's basically application filtering and why it's important that we need to understand? Can you guys tell me about application filtering? Do you guys have any idea? If you have attended the other classes, other vendors classes, you might be having some idea about the application filtering. Can you guys tell me about the application filtering?
Sir, it is the method by which we filter some applications unwanted or like BitTorrents and all, which normally run with HTTP or a similar secure protocols, and it will not be able to filter with the normal firewalls. So for FortiGate and other next generation firewalls, categorize them using an app ID by which they have some signatures of applications, and by which they will be able to detect and filter them.
Absolutely. So basically what you mean, application is an layer 7 uh, layered like
हम्म
application. It depends on layer 7. Yes,
तो
Sashi.
चेक करना क्यों नहीं हो रहा?
Sashi, turn off your mic. Okay. See, if you have any layer 7 applications, those layer 7 applications, if you want to filter it, how will you filter those applications which belongs to layer 7? Now, see the previous firewalls like when I talk about ASA firewall or when I talk about the routers or L3 devices, they are good to filter the traffics based on your layer 3 or the layers 4 informations like IP address or the port numbers. They are good to filter. Let's say you can apply an access list, you can apply, the other filtering methods to block or to allow any kind of the access. But here it's not about the layer 3, it's not only about layer 4, it's also about the layer 7 applications. It's also about the applications which relies on the layer 4. Like we have few applications, and like you can see most of the applications which rely on your layer 4. Let's say if I talk about
सर मेरा
telnet,
ऑडियो नहीं चल रहा, अभी आया आवाज.
uh, is it audible now?
Yes, now I am audible, but before I am not audible. Ola skip.
But others were able to hear. It might be your issue.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so telnet, HTTP, right, HTTPS, there are multiple protocols which basically belongs to or depends on the layer 4, right? Like telnet at the transport layer belongs to Check. Keep your mics on mute, guys. Turn it on only when you have a requirement. Let's say telnet works on port number 23. HTTP works on TCP port number 80. HTTPS works on the port number 443. So in this way, we have the multiple applications which runs on the application layer, but depends on the layer 4, right? Now, if I want to block any, the access based on these port numbers, we can easily block these port numbers, right? But I want to block an application. I want to block the applications, right? Not only based on the port numbers, also based on the multiple characters. Like there are the few applications. Let's say, for example, what I mean here is, let's say if I want to block telnet, then you can say at the layer 4, if you block the port number 23, you'll be easily blocking this particular application. If I block port number 80, I'll be easily blocking the HTTP or 443 for HTTPS. So these are the applications which will use these port numbers only for access by default. But there are an applications which uses a random port number. For example, if I have a torrent, if I have a Yahoo Messenger, such type of applications, these are few applications, right? These are just an application which uses a dynamic port numbers, uses a dynamic communication, right? In this dynamic communication, you will have a different port numbers used. Now it can be TCP or it can be UDP, it can be any kind of port number. Your torrent can establish a connection behind 53 also. It can establish the connection behind 80 also. It can be, establish the connection behind any other running protocols, or it can use any dynamic port number, such type of the torrent application is. Now tell me guys, in a real time, are you guys going to block the entire port number? Is it possible to block the entire port number to block the single type of application? Is it possible? No,
Sir.
right? So basically, till some extent you can think to block the port numbers and to stop some applications, right? But completely you don't have an visibility to all the types of applications, right? If you don't have an application filtering feature in your firewall, you will not have an visibility to the entire applications running in this world, right? So basically, see, firewall also has a mechanism based on which it identifies what type of application is passing through the firewall. Okay, if I give you guys an application compared to new next generation firewall and the old firewall, then you guys can understand in this way. Let's say I'm giving two types of comparisons. Let's say this is a traditional firewall and this is your next generation firewall. Now let's say this is your ASA firewall, or let's say this is non-next generation firewall, it's a normal firewall, okay, some XYZ, and this is your 40-gate firewall. Okay, this is your 40-gate firewall. Now through this firewall, I want our DNS traffic to be allowed it, or any particular traffic to be allowed it. Let's say I want to allow HTTP traffic and want to block the torrent traffic, right? So I just want to allow this and I want to block this. This is what I want. But in like traditional firewalls, if I use a dedicated port number which is used by a torrent, if I block that particular port number, right, but still your torrent can establish the connection via 80 if 80 is running, Based on the AT, it can establish the connection. This is how the torrent works. And your firewall will not be capable for filtering such type of applications because we have allowed it the port number 80, and torrent is capable even to establish the connection behind the 80. And your firewall will not be able to stop it because your firewall does not have a visibility to the application which is running behind the other application. Guys, are you getting my point, what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
So this torrent application uses a dynamic communication which can establish a connection behind the other protocol. And your firewall will not have a visibility that a torrent is also passing. Let's say what you will do on the firewall, you will block all the port numbers. For example, just I'm giving you example. What you might be thinking, I'll block any port numbers, right? And on top of this, I'll allow one port number that's only HTTP. This you have allowed it, right? Now you are thinking like I allowed it only HTTP. Apart from HTTP, if any other port number access comes, then this rule will not trigger. It will go to the other rule, and in the other rule it will find any other port numbers that will get blocked. That's what you might be thinking. You might be thinking your entire connection is secured. Your torrent will not be able to establish the connection, but it's myth. It's not a correct thing. It's not true. If HTTP is able to establish the connection, then behind the HTTP, your torrent can establish the connection. Behind the HTTP, your torrent can establish the connection. This is what the torrent can do. Torrent is capable to establish the connection behind the your HTTP itself. Why? Because your normal firewall does not have a visibility to these applications. These firewalls does not have the feature called the application filtering. But the same thing, if it tries to pass through the FortiGate firewall, your FortiGate firewall will be easily identifying the applications running behind the other protocol. Let's say if I have a HTTP and torrent, right? And if I want to run this applications through the FortiGate firewall, I want to allow the HTTP, right? And if I try to take the torrent behind the HTTP, if I try to run, your FortiGate firewall will automatically understand it. Your FortiGate firewall will not allow this torrent application to run behind the HTTP. Why? Because the FortiGate firewall is a next generation firewall. It's a next generation firewall, and it has a feature called application filtering. Okay, it has an application filtering feature, and in that feature we have all those mechanisms which can easily understand what type of applications are trying to run through your firewall. Okay, so in this case you can see your FortiGate firewall wins because it has a next generation filtering mechanism. That's your app filtering. Now a traditional firewall says no issues, I can deploy another device in my network to filter an application. They will say, okay, I'll deploy the another device called as a IPS. I'll deploy IPS and I'll filter the application. So yes, in this case, when the traffic, both the traffics passing through HTTP comes to the IPS, IPS has the application filtering feature, right? So your application filter will be applied here, and IPS will be able to identify the torrent, and torrent will get blocked over here. But in the case of FortiGate firewall does not need any kind of other device like a IPS. Your FortiGate firewall itself is capable for filtering an application. By default, application filtering is not enabled. It's like all the applications will get allowed by default, but if you enable it, it will block the applications. So in the second scenario also we understood that how useful your FortiGate firewall is, right? Now, what's the mechanism behind the application filtering mechanism? That your firewall can understand the behavior or any kind of application coming to your firewall. Now, I'm specifically talking about the FortiGate firewall right now. In a FortiGate firewall, guys, you have something known as a signature database. You have a SIG database. Now, what's a signature database? What's a signature, first of all? Any idea, guys, what's a signature?
The cache value, sir.
No.
Some characteristic or a thing of an application which like a data type or something by which application can be identified.
Correct. You can say it's like the properties of that particular application based on which it has been created. That properties has been, defined in that particular signature, right? Now, if any attack happens, see, on your firewall, you also have the IPS signature database. In an IPS signature database, what you'll have? Now, to understand this signature database, I'm taking a different example. Now, let's say further in the FortiGate firewall, we'll also have an introduction about the IPS. What's an IPS? We'll understand about it. So in IPS, again, we'll understand what's an intrusion prevention, how you can block the kind of attacks. In IPS, again, we'll have the signature DB, right? So in a signature DB, what you'll have, it's like signature database will have a pattern of attack which has been already created, the exploits which has been already done. Such exploited kind of the attacks will be created as a signature in the firewall. So if some type of attack again happens, if same type of attack again happens, it matches with the signature database. Now, in an easier method, what I'm trying to explain you. Now, let's say attacker used a script called as a B, C, D. Let's say this is my script, which is used to perform an attack. Now, I have already configured this ABCD as a signature in my firewall, right? I have created this attack in a same manner, capital A, capital B, capital C, capital D. I haven't changed a single value also. I haven't changed the hash value of this attack. Everything is same. As the attack is done, the same way I created the signature. In my signature, I have the same properties. I have the same information. Now, there is an attacker, right, who is trying to perform the attack by using this script called ABCD. So when this script is basically coming to the firewall has a predefined signature called ABCD, right? When it comes and when it is active, when this signature is active, when this signature is active, in that case, what will happen? This signature, this attack which is coming with ABCD will get matched with the signature called the ABCD, right? And it will match the content ABCD, right, in the capital letter along with the hash value, everything will match. When this gets matched, your firewall understands that it's an attack. It's an attack. So what action should be taken? Now, in my firewall, what action I have given? Have I given a deny? Have I said drop? Have I told allow? What's an action that I have mentioned? So based on your action, right, the packet will be either dropped, allowed, or whatever it is. Guys, are you understanding what I'm saying? What's
Yeah,
the
it's
signature?
work similar
Yes.
to antivirus.
Yes, I mean, like, it's the same like the same type of an application, what you're trying to execute or what you're trying to run, the same thing has been designed as a signature, right? So, see, you can take an example of anything, you can compare with anything, but what you need to understand here, see, either you can take an example of IP, the antivirus, or you can take an example of anything. So basically that signature is having all those properties based on which it can identify what type of application is coming. Okay, just as I gave an
Okay, sir.
example of, yeah, tell me guys. So as I gave an example of the attack, the same way the example of the application also becomes. If any application is coming, let's say if a HTTP packets come, then how the HTTP header looks like, what are the properties under the HTTP, right? What is the port number, how HTTP behaves, right? It's a web traffic. So all the informations will be mentioned in the signature itself. So whenever any HTTP traffic is coming, your firewall is easily identifying it. But if any other application which is coming and trying to create a connection through the firewall with a random type of behavior, your firewall will automatically understand it. So if your firewall is able to match the properties of torrent with its a database well and enough, your firewall will detect that this is the application which is trying to get an access through a HTTP. You will get an information. If your firewall is not able to identify what kind of application it is, it will put it as an unknown traffic. So your FortiGate firewall also has a category called as a unknown. In that unknown category, that particular traffic will be shown, because what firewall will say, I could not understand what type of application it is, so I kept this type of application inside the unknown category. So later on you guys can see the logs, you can see the behavior, and you can create the a type of application category for that unknown application, and you can define the action for that. So basically what I'm telling you, you have both the abilities on the FortiGate firewall. You can go with the system defined signature, or you can create a user defined custom, user defined signature, which we also call it as a custom application. So basically you have a system defined signature application filtering, and you can also create the custom application or the custom signature for the application filtering. But you should be aware of all those properties, like what is application type, whether it is running on TCP or UDP, what is the port number used. So basically in your logs you will understand the details of your application, and based on that information you guys will understand what type of application it is, and you guys can create your own type of the custom application to block the further access. Okay, so these are the things you guys can do. Now there are other multiple things that you can do. Now when I talk about a signature system defined, and when I talk about the custom or the like user defined, in this case always understand the first priority will be given to user defined. Guys, always understand, either it's any firewall, the behavior will remain same. If I have a signature which is system defined, and if I don't have a application for which I'm creating a user defined signature, always understand in that case, user defined will be given as a priority. Guys, are you understanding what I'm trying to tell here?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Shashi, Preeti,
Yes, sir.
Surya Prakash, are you understanding what I'm saying? Between system defined and the user defined, which application category will be given as a priority?
System defined.
User defined.
No, user defined will be given as a priority. Why? There is a reason. You need to understand. Let's say, for example, guys, I have a category called a social networking, right? Networking, right? I have a social networking. In a social networking, what are the websites, guys? What are the websites under the social networking?
Facebook, LinkedIn.
Okay, we have a Facebook,
Twitter.
right? Just a minute. Let's say I have a Facebook, Twitter, right? I have LinkedIn, right? So I have these many multiple types of, the type of social networking sites which comes under the social networking category. Now, if I block the entire category, if I block this entire category, then what will happen, guys? The entire social networking sites will get blocked, right? But I want, my requirement is I want a Facebook to be allowed, rest all the applications should get blocked. That's my requirement. Now, how can I fulfill my requirement? So in this case, what you guys have to do, you guys have to create a custom or the user defined category. And in that category, you will define the particular website and you will define the action. So let's say I'll create a custom category called as a FB, right? And inside this, I'll define www. I'll define the custom category, just a minute, called as a custom FB. That's my category name. And inside this, I'm going to define the website as a www.facebook.com, right? And I'll give the action as a allow. Understand, guys, two things over here. I have a default category. I have a default category, right? And I have a custom category. Two different categories I have here. Now, understand, if I'm trying to access www.facebook.com, right? And if I send this request, see guys, if I'm sending this request to the firewall, if firewall is matching the system defined category, if it matches, if it does not give the the priority to the custom, if it does not give an priority to the custom, if it gives a priority to the default category, the system defined category, then what will be the result for this Facebook, guys? What will be the result for the Facebook?
Facebook
Drop.
will be blocked.
Block, right? Is there any meaning of creating this custom custom category?
No, sir.
No, right? There is no meaning. There is no meaning, right? So always understand the custom one will be given as a first priority. So now just check, though I have a Facebook, in the system defined, but I created the custom, and in that I defined the Facebook and I gave action as a allow, though my social networking category, entire category under which a Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn is there, the entire social networking category action is blocked. I agree. But I again created one custom category, and inside that category I defined my Facebook and I gave the action as a allow. So firewall understood there is a custom category. Now see how the behavior of your firewall will be. So this request will come to your firewall. Firewall will try to match to the first custom category. Under the custom category, it will find the Facebook. What will be the action, guys?
Hello?
Allow. It means Facebook will get allowed it, right? Now, the same time, Twitter will try to come. Twitter.com will try to come. Now, this will send a request. It will try to match the custom category. In the custom category, is there Twitter?
No. Block.
No. If Twitter is not there, then obviously it will go for the second rule. In the second rule, it will find there is a social networking system defined category. In that, Twitter is there, right? So Twitter is matching. What is the action? Block. So packet will get blocked over here. So guys, did you understand how the things are working?
Yes, sir.
Sir, I have a doubt here.
Tell me.
So this most of the things which we are telling as www.facebook.com, twitter.com, these more are matching like a URL filtering. Where is the application part here actually?
See, correct. See, basically what happens, your application filtering, URL filtering, they all are, interconnected with each other. Okay. See, there are the applications which are related to your web also. There are some non-web applications also. Okay. So if you guys want a complete filtering, you have to take a help of application filtering as well as the URL filtering, right? Now, Facebook is based on URL also, and Facebook has its application also. Do you guys agree with this?
Yes, sir.
Twitter has its application also, and Twitter has its web access also. So both the ways you guys have to filter it. Now, most of the time, this Twitter and Twitter or the Facebook and all will be filtered with the application filtering itself, though it's under the web filtering also, but your application filtering also works with the Twitter or the Facebook and all type of the websites. Why? Because they all are the application based. Now you should be aware of like what type of behavior of the application is. If you know that, then you will be able to identify. Now let's say I have YouTube or some other type of applications. Some firewalls are not able to block the applications filtering for the, if they are defining the application for the application filtering for the YouTube, but YouTube is not getting blocked. So such type of applications are not basically application based. They are supposed to be filtered with the URL. So you have to take the help of URL. That's the reason why the your next generation firewall has all the types of engines, application filtering, URL filtering, right? So you have to understand, see, firewall has both the types of filterings. Facebook is application based also and URL based also, but most of the time Facebook, Twitter type of the sites gets filtered by the application filtering itself. Why? Because the pattern, the way it gets an access, the way it's designed, it also comes under the application filtering. Okay.
Sir, just sorry for bringing a related one from another firewall like Palo Alto. There we have a definition name for Facebook, Facebook chat, and similarly it will have
Correct.
a application. Does FortiGate have a similar one like Facebook?
Obviously, I was coming to that point. Right now, I just went through application. Right. I have few more things to discuss on that. Right. Right now, we have an application visibility control. What you are talking about is an application visibility control, AVC feature. Right.
Okay.
So AVC feature, application visibility control. Now, what's an application visibility control? Let's say on the top of Facebook, we have multiple other sub applications, right? Now, let's say on my Facebook, someone is trying to do a video chat, right? Video chat. Someone is trying to download, upload, trying to play the games, right? Trying to upload images, or multiple things are there. Video chat, audio chat, right? So in this way you guys can find out multiple sub applications running on one particular type of application. So Facebook is a base application. On top of that, we have the multiple sub applications running. If I block base, means all these sub applications will also get blocked. But I want a Facebook to open, but I don't want these sub applications to run. Because if someone is doing video chat, if someone is downloading, uploading, playing games, audio chat, then definitely what will happen, more bandwidth will be consumed, right? I don't want this bandwidth consuming applications to run, right? But I want them to allow the Facebook, but not this sub application. So is it possible to filter it on the on the FortiGate firewall? The answer is yes, it's possible. You can do this. Okay. And other major part what I would like to discuss is, see, taking an example of this particular Facebook and the sub applications, no doubt these applications will be running on some protocol and the port numbers, right? For example, it might be running on a HTTP or HTTPS or some custom port number. Correct? Yes or no, guys?
Yes, sir.
This might be running on multiple type of port numbers. So your firewall also has a service-based filtering. Now, see, application filtering is one of the type. The other type also we have the service filtering. Now let's say what I'm trying to tell here is somewhere related to your application filtering as well. So it's very important to understand. Let's say I have an application. I have a multiple applications. Let's say I have the HTTP based applications. I have multiple applications like HTTP based, HTTPS based, DNS based. I have FTP based, right? I have SMTP based, right? So I have multiple applications running on multiple protocols, right? So this comes under the application. And other thing what we have, other type of filtering in your firewall called as a service. Now understand, guys, in a service by default there is any in your policy, and this application is not applied by default on FortiGate, right? If not applied means it's like any, I'm giving an access to any application. When it comes to service, in a service also we are giving allow any service. Now let's say, guys, by default any application is allowed through the firewall and any service is allowed through the firewall. It means any application can pass through the firewall. Guys, are you understanding this, what I'm saying, all of you?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
It means any application can pass through the firewall. Now let's say I'm doing the service filtering. I'm doing a service filtering. Instead of any, I'm going to allow only. Now let me add few more applications like telnet SSH. Now let's say, for example, guys, I allowed it only SSH. I allowed it only SSH. We have ping. We have multiple types of applications, guys. I allowed it. Ping means basically I tried saying ICMP. I allowed it only SSH. Now in this case, do you think, guys, all these applications will be passing through your firewall?
No,
Why?
because we allow only SSH.
But in application, I have any, right? In my application, I have any, then why all the applications will not be allowed?
Some applications may use the HTTPS and those services also, sir. So they would be passing.
Correct. So basically what you are telling here is the application also depends on the service, right? It's not only the application has its own type of behavior. It depends on the services. So if my firewall allows only SSH, it means rest all these applications will not get access. Only SSH will get an access, right? But by default, what is the behavior? The behavior is any. By default, the behavior is any, right? It means what is happening? It means whatever the applications are running and whatever the port numbers are used by these applications are getting access through the services also, because in a service field, any is there. It means no matter what port numbers will be or what services will be used by these applications will get an access through the firewall. That's basically the feature used by your FortiGate firewall. So I hope now you guys have a clarity on the application filtering, right guys?
Yes.
So shall we start the practical now? Okay, let's see. So let me start. Guys, as you know, when you work with the FortiGate firewall, every after 15 days, your FortiGate firewall demo license will get expired. So every after 15 days, you have to replace the firewall. So I was not able to get an access to the firewall GUI. So I replaced the firewall, but I have already configured the interfaces over here, most of the things. So let's see. I'll try to ping 105.0.0.254. Okay, I'm able to access. Use Firefox browser to access your firewall. So let's say 105.254 username admin login, and here I have interfaces configured. You can see management, LAN, DMZ, WAN all are configured, Guys, here one modification I have to do. Here, as per our previous topology, our IP address was 172.16.3.50. I want to apply the same IP, and our gateway was 254. So I'm just modifying as per my network. So 172.16.3.254. So default route given. So from the firewall CLI, I'll test a connectivity to internet. So I'll try to log in with the username admin, password, capital A, small b, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'll say execute ping to 8.8.8.8, and you can see I have a reachability. So looks all good, and I'll try to come to your means Windows PC, that's your LAN PC, log in and try to get an access to the internet. First of all, let's test a connectivity with ping, checking and reachability to the internet. I do have a access. So there is an internet connectivity, guys. Let's try an access to Facebook or some other type of websites. Let's try an access for Google. Resolving host. There is some issue. Let's see, do we have an DNS issue or what? No, everything looks good. Let's see the policies on the firewall. So we'll come to policy, and under the policies, LAN to WAN, we have a policy, and in this policy we can see we have LAN to WAN, all the source to all the destinations, so schedule always, and service is all ICMP only. That's why it was not getting an access. So I said all the type of services. See, all service means all the services. I didn't limit any particular type of service. These are the particular type of services. This is the exactly same what I explained you guys here. I'm not limiting a particular type of application, means service. I'm allowing all the services, right? All the services, and saying, okay, once this is done, and you guys can see, I have an access to Facebook. I have an access to Google. Guys, did you see, even if I didn't apply the application filtering, even your service is blocked, you will not get an access to the particular type of applications or the URLs, right? Now let's see here. Currently in your filter means policy, you can see source and destination. These are based on layer 3 informations. Services contains your layer 4, the port numbers, and here I have given all the port numbers. Now if I limit this service, here in the service field, if I limit any services, so these applications will also get affected. Right now in my policy, I don't see anywhere application filtering applied. It means it's like all the type of applications with all services are getting access. Okay, here all means any. So every type of access you guys are getting. Now let's say if I allow ICMP only, so what will happen? Your ICMP will work. Eight dot 8.8 will work, but your URL or other applications will not work. You will see it's showing as a resolving an IP, not able to open. Keeps moving, say, shows here connecting, but not able to connect. So this was a service-based application filterings. So based on the services, you can block the applications. And say apply. Guys, are you getting my point? Based on services, you can filter an application. Is this clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, other thing what you can do, you can come to the same policy, and inside the policy, you can see there is a option of application filtering. Application filtering. Turn it on, and you can see default over here. You can see default, block, Wi-Fi default, right? Highest risk. So these are three default categories. Either you go with a default, by default it's a default itself. It means whatever the database are there, by default predefined actions are given to the signatures. So that will be applied. By default it's like this. But if I want to use block a high riskable application, so by default, whatever the applications are blocked or whatever the details are given in, given in the firewall pre-configured, that particular action will be taken. Now you might be thinking, how can I see that? So what you guys can do, come to the security profiles. Under the security profiles, you guys have application control. Come here. And under the application control, you can see these things: default, block, and Wi-Fi default. Let's say if I want to see block high risk, you guys can see under this all the proxies, like 106 types of applications are there, and peer-to-peer connection 85 types of connections are there. They all are blocked under the highly riskable applications. Now if you want to see those applications, again you have to, view the signatures. You can click here, signatures which are basically designed. Is my voice clear, guys, or it's low?
Clear, sir.
Just a minute, I guess my headphone has been disconnected. Okay. Okay, so you guys can see now, these are the signatures, and you can see the risk categories: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's basically categorized here. So you can see all these blocks, when it is full, it's like highly riskable, right? So these are the basically risk categories over here. Okay, so what we are telling, these are highly riskable type of applications, like using a proxy method, right, and using a peer-to-peer type of connections, all those things. Like your torrent will be using peer-to-peer connection, your TeamViewer will be using peer-to-peer connection, multiple other applications are there. You can see the list also. So all these type of applications will be using peer-to-peer type of connections. You can see these are the most, you can see BitTorrent, Bitcoin, all this type of, the types of access will be using a peer-to-peer connection. So according to the FortiGate database, whatever the highly riskable type of applications are there, or the kind of applications through which vulnerabilities can be there, so they are blocking such kind of default access. So this is the predefined or system defined category, block high risk. If you want to see Wi-Fi, under this you will see something different. So here you can see all the categories getting allowed. Everything is allowed, nothing blocked. If you see default, under the default you can see like unknowns are also allowed, and the other applications monitored will be monitored. These applications, you can see I option, it's basically monitored. So this is what happening. Any actions will not be taking. Monitored means it will be allowed, but action will be by default as a allow itself, right? But it will not get blocked. So it's basically monitoring, but any kind of actions are not taken. So highly recommended to monitor such type of traffics, right? So this is the default one. But if I want any blocking things, now I don't want any kind of the changes to be done over here. So if you guys want to modify anything, if you want to take any action, you guys can clone a default, or you can create a kind of your own database. You can do a cloning of the particular type of entire database of the application. You can see this is a clone option. So you can say clone of default, you can say okay, and you can see the entire cloned application has been created. Now you can see clone default. Now inside this I want my own type of the actions to be taken. All are allowed, but I want the mobile application, sorry, I want proxies to be blocked, P2P to be blocked, social networking should be quarantined. Okay, no, depends for how many hours, how many days, how many minutes you guys can put it for the quarantine purpose. Like
So what is quarantine actually? Like it doesn't allow or it just monitors it?
it blocks. Okay, it blocks, does not allow.
Then why we have two categories, a block and quarantine?
See,
Allow, deny is there, a block is there, quarantine is there. So
uh,
why do we have two categories
See,
of same
basically,
act, block
if
and
any malicious activities or if any other things are occurred, right, suspicious activities are there, it will be suspended. Okay, so that's basically happens in the quarantine. Okay, after that we have an email. After that we have other things also. We have a cloud signatures also, but for cloud you should have an access for the cloud services. Then only this is possible. By default it won't be there. So guys, such type of access you can apply. You can apply your own clone type of the default things. Let's say I want to block the entire social networking and apply it, and go back to the policies, come here and come to your profile, come to application filtering. I will like come to your policy and apply this clone default and say okay. So now that particular type of rule has been applied. Here my services are all, but the applications are limited. So let's come to the Facebook and try getting an access to the Facebook now. Facebook is blocked. Twitter.com is blocked. Such things will be blocked. if someone is trying to violate the rules, they will be quarantined for certain time. Now, let's say this is the current rule, but entire database like social networking, entire thing has been blocked right now. Now, I want certain things to be allowed and certain things to be blocked. In that case, again, I'll come to the security profiles, applications, and come to application override. So you can see application override and you can apply the filter based on the name. You can filter the application. Now, let's say Facebook. You want the entire Facebook. You can see the chat, these download, all these things are also there. Subcategories are also there. These many subcategories are there. So I'm out of that, I'm using only Facebook, which is base actually, right? And I want to define an action as a allow, right? And I want to define it. So it's like a custom I defined under, it went under the default. No, I want under the clone because the clone was applied. So under this, I want to add, it's an application override. It's a custom application, guys. So by the name, I want to filter Facebook. Now this is the base Facebook. Social networking, use this signature. Action, I want allow and applied. So now as a result, you guys can see Twitter trying to access, not getting an access, but Facebook so is given priority and getting an access. So guys, is this clear to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, guys. This is done. Tomorrow we'll see new topic. Okay.
Sir,
Hmm.
uh, we have around six students in our class. Most
Hmm.
of us, in our normal classes, we normally get introduced to each other,
Hmm.
which we haven't done this class. It would be better if we have a session for introducing and knowing each other. For
Tomorrow
this,
before recording starts, so you can do. Okay. Before
okay,
recording.
sir.
Okay. Bye. See you guys. Take care.